It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Yo, man. Oh, Miss Rusty. I feel like it's been a long time. I don't know how long it's been. Too long is the answer. So it's Monday. You guys, Monday's a fun day. You don't think Monday's a fun day? Change your shit up. So thank you everyone for being here on the Public Access Podcast, the podcast here on the Quantum Global Broadcasting Network, QGBN. Like I said, I'm Rusty. And you guys, thanks again. I said that already too. So I think I'm ahead of it. If not, you guys see there's some boxes down here. I'm cleaning shit. I'm moving shit, packing up. So everything's gonna be kind of chaotic. This will probably be less and less as the time goes on for the next few weeks. So bear with me here. But I have a special guest today, and I already started talking to him. And I was like, yeah, let's just start it up. So now that I paused it for a little bit to do the introduction, I'm going to bring on my special guest right here, right now. And my special guest right here, right now is Harvey Hazen. Did I say that right? I forgot to ask that part at the beginning.
You did. That is
Hazen.
correct, Hazen.
Excellent. Okay. I was worried. I did that the last few times. I keep forgetting, and I'm like, oh, I need to make sure I am spelling or saying it correctly. But I guess I don't need to worry about the spelling that's on there. So, but yeah, thank you for being here on the show today. I appreciate you taking some time today. So thank you for that.
Well, that's great. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And so, okay, so we were talking beforehand. So you've been kind of all over the Northwest. And yeah, we were talking about, yeah, some places. One of them you brought up though was Madras. When were you in Madras? Were you there in the mid 80s?
You really want to know?
I,
That was my first teaching job. I started teaching in Madras in 1968.
okay, so you were there before. What I was getting at was you there like in the when was that, like 86 or
No,
something?
I only spent 3 years in Madras. Then I
Okay.
moved back over the mountain to Milwaukee and was a counselor at Milwaukee for 8 years or so. So,
And so then that would have been a few years after, but that was at Rex Putnam. I'm not sure exactly what year that the Kingsmen were there.
yeah,
That sang Louie Louie.
I think that's during that time. That was at Rex Putnam High School, the other high school in
The other
the
one,
district.
Milwaukee.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I was at the old high school downtown Milwaukee. But I believe you're correct. I think that was during the time I was there because I left in '89. Uh,
Okay.
so I believe the Kingsmen were there. One of my favorite bands. I don't think I went to the concert, but
Yeah.
uh, so
Yeah. It was close enough. And then, yeah, one of the things I guess, I was talking about last week on the show, I was talking about somehow it got brought up, uh, I don't know how you want to say that, but whatever the stuff that happened in Madras, with the Rajneeshi,
well, that's
events.
I have some interesting stories about that too. I guess that's from being all over. I was in Hood River when the Rajneeshi hit.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty
My
close.
wife, however, was a special ed teacher for Wasco ESD,
Oh,
and
so right there in the
she went
district.
to Antelope. That was one of her assignments was at Antelope.
Whoa.
So I had some kind of inside knowledge. I mean, about what went on. It was interesting. She drove a red car, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not.
I
But
probably
they
loved
would,
her then.
on multiple occasions, they would follow her out of town
Oh,
to check.
yeah.
I guess they were just checking on what she was doing. And on the day that they, on the Friday that they poisoned did the salmonella poisoning in the salad bars and the Dows,
Yeah.
she usually went out to eat with and usually ate salad bar. And
Whoa.
luckily, she did not go that day because she didn't have any money, so she didn't go out to eat. And but her superintendent got food poisoning. A number of other staff members that had been out to lunch got food poisoning. So and the other thing that's kind of interesting story about that, I'm a great storyteller. I love stories. But anyway,
Perfect.
uh,
Then you're on the right place.
Sheila, Ma and Aunt Sheila came to Hood River to convince us that they had services that they could offer the district. And I remember sitting directly across the table from her and studying her personality and her eyes and that because I was a counselor. I do that stuff. And I thought, there's something very strange about this woman. Uh, and then that was at the very initial start when they first started. And then it kind of just progressed from there. The sad thing about that is that they did some really neat stuff with that ranch out there at the Old Muddy, and they could have been, I think, a really viable, good citizen of that community. But it went awry somewhere, I mean, so
I mean,
interesting times.
so what did you think of her, of Sheila?
I sensed sitting that close to her, you get a feeling about people. And
Yeah.
I just sensed that there was something malevolent about her. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but she just gave off a sense to me that there was something not right. So when the whole thing came down and she ended up being the kind of center of the person that had orchestrated the poisoning and stuff, I wasn't totally surprised in the sense that I just felt at that meeting like there was something strange with her.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
it was interesting. We saw all the films of the Bhagwan leaving in one of his multiple Rolls Royces and the whole community chanting as he left, and it was just kind of so when people talk about cults and stuff, I say, yeah, man, I know a little bit about how
Yeah.
that works, but it was interesting times.
Because yeah, I mean, yeah, you were right there, right in the middle of it, and yeah, I mean, it was something I don't think I knew about until maybe like 15 years ago, which is odd. Living in, you know,
Yeah.
I've lived in Oregon since 1987, and so that would have happened maybe just a little bit before then, maybe like
Yeah, I think so. I think
a
so.
few
Just
years.
85, 84, somewhere right in there, I think, was
Yeah,
probably the date.
yeah. There was a guy who was a professional wrestler who actually the people that I know in Shelton were actually trained by this guy. But then during that time, he was wrestling in the Northwest and ended up doing he had a character where he was basically a Rajneeshi guy as a bad
I
guy.
think I remember that. I don't remember his name, but I think I
Uh,
remember something like that. He had a whole play off of, the,
yeah,
yeah,
the Mega Maharishi Ahmed,
yeah.
uh,
So,
which was Colonel De Beers was the guy
yeah.
that did that. But yeah, I mean it was a big thing, and it was yeah, I don't know. Then I've heard some other wild stories about it, and it's just been something that's kind of interesting. And then like you were saying, like I don't know if I was older would I have been attracted to that? And would I have gone over there? Because I mean, it seemed like it was a good thing, but then I don't know if like I don't
You
know.
know,
I don't know
I
where I would
think
have
it
been.
started out with the best intentions in the whole world. I mean, that the ranch that they took over, I'll admit, I've hunted on that ranch when I was a teenager and in high school. I know the ranch really well, and it had just
Well,
been run into the ground. I mean, it was one of those ranches that had cattle run on it, and it had been grazed, and there was a lot of erosion on the ranch and stuff. And they really did some really neat things with the ranch, and they built some great buildings, greenhouses, and all sorts of stuff. Um, and and I'm not sure where the whole thing went wrong. I don't know if it was all just with Sheila, or whether the Rajneesh himself had a hand in it, or the Bagwan had a hand in it. I don't know. But all of a sudden, they started trying to take over the government in Wasco County. And
yeah,
when that didn't work, then it led to some of the other stuff that went on. And I, yeah, strange times.
yeah.
So
Did you ever see that documentary that they did? Ended up doing?
I did, I did, and it was pretty accurate to what I remember, going on.
Yeah,
Uh, I the end of the documentary where they followed what had happened to the people afterwards and stuff. I didn't know that part. That was interesting to me because I knew he went back, I think, to India, and I knew she had disappeared, but then got arrested. And
yeah. There wasn't like much after that. Like once the news came out that they left it and it was just
yeah,
over. There wasn't much of a
I
follow
and
up
I
on it.
never one thing I never heard and always wondered about is the people that I think the people that joined um, the commune gave pretty much all their resources to the commune. And I think that's what built the buildings and bought his Rolls Royces and did all that stuff. I don't know what happened to them. I always wondered about that. Where did they go? What did they do? Did they,
Yeah,
regain their life, or what happened?
there was a lot. There was that's a lot of people that just no
Yeah,
one knows their story.
no.
And
So
yeah, I mean that'd be kind of interesting to try. I don't know. I wonder if people are around or if any of them are
I don't know.
still
It's a
even want to
good
talk
question.
about it or yeah,
Curious. If you could get in touch with some of them, get them on the podcast, that would be really interesting to find
yeah.
out what happened after the fact with them.
Uh, where'd you go?
Yeah,
Where'd you go? And yeah, because I mean it was yeah, the whole thing just is crazy. Because I mean it's the only thing in the U.S. of the only bioterror attack in the
yeah.
country, and
On a little bitty old town like Dallas, Oregon, I feel like
yeah,
how strange, but
yeah, because I mean between that and then like the only uh, what is it? The only there was that there's like a Japanese weather balloon at the end of World War II that came over and then ended up like
yeah.
ended up I forgot where that ended up
I,
not crashing. It
I
was
don't
somewhere in
remember
Oregon.
the whole story behind that either. I remember there was a big panic over it. All sorts of stuff went on. Oh,
Yeah,
there's some great stories come out of Oregon. Oregon is,
yeah.
how about the whale that went on the
That
beach and
they
then
had to
tried to blow it back in the water, and it blew
on the news.
on the news. I mean,
Yeah.
I could tell stories about Oregon all day long, but and I'll tell you one more since we're telling stories. There was a wreck down on I-5 somewhere around Eugene, and a whole group of cattle got loose, and
Oh
there
no.
was a they were Black Angus. And so the Eugene, I think it was Eugene News, had a report on about the Black Angus, and the two reporters are sitting there, and the one said something about Black Angus, and the other guy said, "Well, I hope they find Black and Gus." I looked at him for the minute, said, "You think it might be Black Angus?"
Uh,
I I don't know, just random stuff. But when I think about Oregon, I think about all the good stories over the years.
and then DB Cooper,
Yep.
there was that one too, which still like,
Well,
and that was another one I didn't know until I was probably 17 or so until I heard about that story. Um, but that one I don't know. I still I don't know what I would say for my conclusion of DB Cooper is, or
well, the fact that
I don't.
they found some of the money in one of the rivers, I can't remember which one that comes into the Columbia, says that he probably did perish in the jump,
Yeah,
unless he planted the money. But that's unlikely. I think he probably did perish in the jump. But who he was, and who knows? I mean, they keep that. It's just a constant. They keep. It's kind of like Bigfoot. It just keeps
yeah.
generating stories. So
Because they even went back to it recently and they closed the file like maybe within the last 5 years, and then they opened it back up maybe a year or two later. Um, yeah, just something that's always going to be the myth of the Northwest. And
right.
uh, so if you come across Bigfoot anywhere yet?
No, but when I taught Mid River, I had a he's still around. He's a friend of mine on Facebook, but I had a social studies teacher that was the basketball coach, girls basketball coach, and he was driving a van back from Portland. And they swear to this day that Bigfoot crossed the road down there by Cascade Locks somewhere. If you know that gorge, you know where I mean. And and you can't talk about it this day. He swears he saw Bigfoot. The Bigfoot crossed the road.
Oh, there, yeah, man, somewhere along the trail, yeah, out there
So,
by the
and the
walk.
girls that were in the van saw it too, but I don't know, some guy dressed in an ape suit, maybe out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
I have no idea. But,
you
uh,
never know in Oregon.
no,
You
you
never
don't.
know what people are going to be doing. And so then you ended up going, and so you were in Madras, and then you went kind of where the job was. Go to there to
Well,
Milwaukee to.
I was kind of one of those people that was always searching for something new and different to do. I don't know. That's just part of my personality. So I while I was in Madras, I got my master's degree in counseling from Portland State, and then I went to Milwaukee High School, stayed there for a number of years, and I was summer school principal at Milwaukee High School for several years, and so that kind of the bug to move into administration kind of bit me, and that's when I went to Hood River as a vice principal first, and then the principal retired and I became principal. I was a principal at the high school for 6, 7 years, and then I wanted to get my superintendent's credential, and doing something like that from the high school job was pretty difficult because you had to drive to Portland to get the classes. Lewis and Clark was the closest place. So
Oh,
I
so
took Weiss Middle School, which is out the valley there at Hood River, if you know the valley, and I was Weiss for 3 years while I got my superintendent's credential. And then I was superintendent over in Stanfield for 3 years, and then I took Lebanon for 3 years. And Lebanon was a interesting place to be finish up your Oregon career, because it was the year that the state of Oregon had demanded or forced all K-8 districts to unify with the high school district. And that happened on July 1st, and I became superintendent on July 1st, and there were 5 elementary districts and 1 union high school district. So I became superintendent. And a number of those elementary school principals that had been superintendents were now principals, and I was their boss. So it was interesting. But I took the job partly at least because I had 3 years left to go to retirement. They gave me a 3-year contract, and I figured just let it come. So it was an interesting ride. Hopefully we did some good things that left the district in better shape. And I retired from there. And my wife said, "You you bought too many toys. You got a boat, you got a camper, you got to go back to work." Well, I can't work in Oregon. I'm collecting Oregon retirement. So I came up to Washington and took a job at the smallest district I could find, which is here by Shelton. It's called Southside, and it's a K-7 school district with about 280 kids. And I was superintendent principal for the first 3 years. And I said to the board, I think I'm going to retire because this is hard work, even though it's 280 kids, you're doing everything. And they said, "Oh, don't do that. We'll hire a principal and cut you to half time." So I stayed another 4 years at Southside, and then retired. And I went over to Yakima and bought 50 acres in Yakima, played with my dogs, and did some hunting and did what I like to do. And as time went on, my wife had a lot of health problems, and we were constantly running back over to the valley to University of Washington for health care and stuff, and over the mountain. And so we ended up moving back over here, and then she passed away in 2019, which led right on into the whole COVID thing. And that was interesting times. And I started watching what was going on in education and the kids coming out of COVID, the parents, and all the disruption. And I decided to try to jump back in and do some good. So I set up the coaching program that I have for parents and kids who are having difficult times, and not making any money, but meeting interesting people like you.
I'll take it.
So that's what I'm doing, and I'm working with a few people that have a variety of programs that I've really sold on. One with drug and alcohol, one a communication program, one's a school safety program, and I'm going to try to help them get that. They're all on the East Coast, and I'm going to try to help get some of those programs into some of the schools in the Northwest, because I really see value in the program. So I'm just doing a variety of things. Luckily, I don't have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say then there's Oregon with what they've done with the education the last few years, and with the part where you don't need to be proficient in reading, writing, or math to be able to advance to the next grade, or to, like if the graduation rates are going to go up, but it's because everyone's getting passed through. And I mean, it's kind of it's hard. It's hard to,
well, it's interesting times in education in general. And if you throw in what occurred during COVID and stuff, it becomes even more interesting. And, I don't like a lot of what I see going on. And I think there's tremendous room for improvement. I'm not ready to say public education is lost, but and I think there's a lot of people out here right now that are looking at serious reforms that could make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
But
I don't have kids, but
we need to change. I mean, the public education needs to change with the times and with the demands. It's and quick fixes like automatic advancement or that sort of thing aren't the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is starting to reconnect with families and kids, starting to treat kids in a way that demands proficiency and yet bolsters the self-esteem and the communication issues and all of those things that kids are having trouble with. And that's part of the reason these three programs I mentioned are so interesting to me, because they all aim at that.
Yeah.
Those issues: one, drug and alcohol; one, communication; and the other, safety. So I guess I'm probably an outlier in a way, both because I retired a number of years ago, and both because I have some ideas that maybe aren't mainstream ideas at the moment. But you got to be doing something with your life, right?
What are you kind of thinking? Exactly, you should be.
So
What do you think? What kind of ideas are you thinking, or is that something you don't want to get into?
no, I'm very glad to get into it. I think one of the things, I was on a podcast the other day, interestingly enough, called Mass Off. And her premise is, I've always called it being authentic, but her premise is that all kids come to school with a mask on. And it depends on what's going on at home. It depends what's going on with their peers. It depends on a lot of things what that mask is. But if the child is having academic problems, if the child that are unexplainable by any neurodiverse, the new term, I wasn't even familiar with it, but
Right. Yeah, I wasn't.
by any neurodiversity or any of that, then there's something else going on. If the child's angry, if the child's disobedient, if the child's skipping, there's a reason for that.
Right.
And I think we have to start looking, as she would put it, behind the mask. We have to start at finding out what truly, really is going on with children. And I say that from both a school standpoint and a parent standpoint. I think parents are so preoccupied with their own life at the moment, especially coming out of COVID and everything, that I think a lot of kids are slipping through the cracks from the parent standpoint that might not have 4 or 5 years ago. But I think the same is true with schools. And one of the things that I think parents need to learn to do is to take part in the school system, to advocate for their child. And when they see something going wrong, to know how to address that. Because what I see happening with parents often is they let things go. They know that the child's struggling. They let things go. Then they're angry. And they
The
show up at
parents or the
school
children?
angry.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing good's going to come out of that.
And you
Uh,
can't learn at that point either because
exactly. The
your
school's not
brain.
going to accept the anger. The kid is being pushed to one side with a parent that's angry and is confronting the school. So I want to get across to parents, if I'm working with the parents, that yes, they need to be an advocate for their child, but they need to do it in a way that's positive. They need to look at what's going on. They need to go to school and say, I want to partner with you. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So together, what can we do to help this child? If they approach it that way, schools generally are amenable to listening, to working, to trying to focus on the needs of that child. Uh, there are other steps that parents can take, obviously, and particularly if the child has a IEP and if the school isn't serving the needs and isn't doing what they need to do, then the parent needs to be aggressive enough to follow that up with an advocacy group or maybe with a lawyer, but they need to make sure that the child is getting the needs met. That's the job of a parent. Um, On
Absolutely.
the other hand, the job of the school is to take that kid as he comes to them, try to see what's behind that mask, so to speak, and work with that child. And I focused on one area that I've thought a lot about, and it's just an example. Suicide. Our teen suicide rates are crazy, and they've gone up since COVID. And we treating it as a mental health issue. And in my opinion, in most cases, it is not a mental health issue. It's an emotional health issue. Kids are so emotionally lost. They're not connected. They don't feel loved. They don't feel cared for. They don't feel important. That they make conscious, and I think this is true with adults too, that they make conscious decisions that it's less painful to be gone than it is to be here and suffer. And I think we need to change our approach to all sorts of issues, not just suicide, and take them, many of them at least, and take them out of the mental health capacity and start looking at them as emotional health issues. So, how can we connect these kids? How can we get them the support they need? How can we help them see that there's value in the curriculum, there's value in connection to their school, their teachers, etc. And I think it's a big task. And I used to say to my staff, even back when I was principal, you don't teach curriculum. You teach kids. You present curriculum in the way that the students can absorb the knowledge that you're trying to get across. But the kid is the focus. The kid's what you teach. And I said it so many times they probably got sick of hearing it, but I really believe that. We focus. If you're a math teacher and you think you're teaching just math, forget it. If you can't interact with that kid, if you can't make that personal contact with that kid, you're not going to get there. And one of my favorite sayings kind of goes to that, is Maya Angelou, and I think a lot of her, what she did in her life. But she said, people will forget what you say. People will forget what you do. People will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that's really true. And I think we don't focus on that enough in schools or as parents. Um, how is that child feeling? How am I connecting with that child and making that child feel? So that's kind of my pitch, and it's a kind of a big topic, but I think if schools are going to survive, they're going to have to start looking at things differently. They're going to have to start looking at it from the child's point of view and saying, what can we do to make those connections that are so important?
And
So
where are you with homeschooling? Do you think that can be done with homeschooled kids as well, or is that kind of more of a
here's what
disconnect as well?
here's what concerns me about homeschool. I think homeschooling can be done and can be done productively. And I think there are some good situations where there's networks, homeschool networks that serve the needs of kids. But I'm concerned about several things. One, is there a connection to a program that can provide the academic support that the child needs? Because I don't care who you are as a parent, you don't know enough
Right.
to teach a high school kid all their subjects. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
you just don't.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's no way
I
my
I'd be
parents
at a
could have.
loss teaching math.
Yeah.
That's not my strong point. So that's one thing that concerns me. The second thing concerns me is the social aspect. The kids need connections to other peers that are positive connections with positive people. Now, there's ways to do that, and sports programs certainly are one of them, and networks and that sort of thing with the younger kids, and they get together there. So I think it can be a positive thing. I'm not opposed to it, but I think there's too many knee-jerk reactions. The public school isn't doing a job. I'm going to take my kid out and homeschool. Well, what I saw even back then was the parent would burn out a year or two down the road. The kid would come back to public school, and all of a sudden he was behind his peers that 2 or 3 years that he'd been out. So that's where I'm at homeschool is, yes, it's a viable option if it's done right. And I see so many cases of it not being done right that concerns me. And I even saw one within my own family. My a family member, well, what family member's relationship is, I might get shot, got frustrated with homeschool. This is a very religious situation. They pulled the kid out and homeschooled. Well, she did the homeschooling herself. She never graduated from high school herself. Well, and it shows in the kids that they're older now. It's not a current thing that's going on. They're older, but they haven't achieved much in their life. And I have to go back to saying that was the issue, at least at the start, because they just didn't get the basis they needed for a good start. So I'm that's where I'm at. It's a yes and a no, I guess, or a conditional yes or conditional no, or however you want to see it. So,
because there's not really any prerequisites to homeschool your kid. I mean,
not where I've been, at least. You can just pull them out and say I'm homeschooling and satisfy the state by proving that they're doing how many hours at home or whatever the state requires, and that's it. And it can be the other thing. I'll be honest, I worry about homeschooling sometimes because I worry about what's going on with those kids at home with no eyes on it from anybody else. I mean, as a school administrator, I wish I didn't have to say this, but I reported a lot of child abuse cases.
That's something that you are trained to look for.
Yeah, that you're trained to look for, and you see the signs of it. Well, if the kid is being homeschooled and it's not in a positive environment, the question becomes what's going on.
Do you think that's something that happens? Maybe not a common, but
I don't know. That's a really good question. I suppose it's one of those things that could lend itself to some good study as to how many cases are there that come out of homeschooling situations that get divulged, and how many aren't there. I mean, I've had such weird situations over the years with kids divulging and stuff, and if they've got nobody to divulge to, you wonder, what's going on. I had a boy. This is in the '80s when I was a counselor at Milwaukee High School, and I had a boy who had been coming to me for counseling, and he was a nice kid, but you could tell there was something going on that was different. One day he walked into my office and he said, Mr. Hazen, I really have to tell you something. I said, what? He said, well, my sister has a little girl and she's 3 years old now. And my dad is doing with her what he's done with every child in the family. I said, what is that? He said, and he didn't describe it this way, but what it was he's grooming her. she goes to the bathroom with him, she, etc. And he said he's done it with every one of our of boys and girls. The whole family has been, in not his words, but sexually abused as they grew up. He said, I can't let this happen with my niece. He said, something's got to stop. Well, I'm a Brandon counselor. This is like my second or third year counselor. This is in the 80s, and it's not something you No, this was in the 70s, and it's not something you're hearing a lot about. I mean, back then.
Yeah.
So I called police. Well, I consulted with my administrator, called the police. The police came, and they turned it over to CFT. Well, he did get tried. He was one of the first in Oregon to be thrown in jail for a fairly long sentence. I don't remember what it was, but so in my mind, having gone through that and other instances, I got to stop and say, kid's homeschooled. When he was in school, there might have been some signs that something was going on. So what's going on now? And why did they pull him from school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suspect that there are more cases of it than we would care to believe. I wish that homeschooling had some sort of check and balance system on things like that, where at least the child had to see a professional on occasion,
Yeah.
a counselor or somebody
Yeah.
where
Maybe
they
like
could talk with,
twice a
you
month
know, something,
for
like
an
that.
hour.
So that's one of my thoughts about homeschool too. But
And so, what do you think then with, I mean, with COVID and doing, because I mean, there's this, like,
boy,
I'm not here with you, but I mean,
the
just,
situation coming out of COVID for kids and for parents, that's been difficult. I mean, parents have been so disrupted and so preoccupied with trying to do their job from home or whatever the case might be, and I can only imagine sitting there thinking to myself, I'm trying to do my job from home, so I got an 8-hour job to do at home. My child's over here in another room with a computer, and he's supposed to be doing his lessons.
right.
Is there any chance for an issue here? And kids came back to school behind. There's no doubt about it. Everything says, they lost a year or whatever in that 2 years
Yeah.
of progress. Um, One of the things I think is that we have to ask ourselves, is something like this going to occur again? Well, if it is, and I think there's a good chance that it might, how can the schools be better prepared to deal with it? How can they have the tools available and ready to deal with this sort of a situation? A lot of those tools are the same tools that they probably should be applying on a daily basis with kids anyway. I don't think there's a either or situation here. So I think that's one thing, a lesson from COVID that we can learn is how can we be better prepared to deal with this if we end up in this situation again. Uh, I think the second thing that we might learn from this whole experience is, so rather than saying, as a public school administrator, rather than saying, well, once the kid leaves school and the parents teaching them at home, they're out of my hair, they're done. How can as a school administrator, I would be saying, how can I partner with that parent to make that kid's experience better? And some of the things that were used during COVID could certainly be worked into that partnership. such as, a chemistry class that was essentially online with a few days that they came into school to work in the lab or something. I mean, some creativity here could go a long ways in partnering with parents and with the school system and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think parents need to be asking that question, and one of the places that they can ask that question is at their school boards. I mean, we have a system in this country where private citizens are elected to a school board. The school board has governance powers over the school district. So if parents groups and parents are active enough to go to the school board and say, we will partner with the district in setting up a program where we can be homeschooling, but the school can also stay in contact. So win-win for the school, because the school ends up still, most states at least, schools ends up still collecting state money because they're partnering with the parent.
Oh yeah.
So why not?
Yeah.
I mean, and it answers some of those other questions about if the school's periodically seeing and working with the child, then it answers some of those other questions possibly about what might be going on at home that might be detrimental to the child's welfare. So I think there's a lot of room for collaboration, improvement in those areas.
I think that's pretty
So
important too. Or just at least having the parent involved with, and being an advocate too for their child's education. And like you were saying, there's a lot of, okay, they're out of my hair for 8 to 10 hours a day, and I have to think
yeah,
about it. They come home and they do whatever, and
right.
yeah, I
And
mean
then
it's
I
unfortunate.
just I just saw that TV program this morning on. They were talking about it as helicopter parents, but it's parents that are. There's a
Yeah,
fine line between uh, raising kids these days. We're in interesting times. I mean, do I let my kid ride down the block on his bicycle with no fear of something bad happening?
right.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean that was how it was when I was a kid.
exactly.
It
I
was, yeah,
I told
keep
I was just
home in
talking
the dark.
I was just talking to somebody about, when I was a kid, I I grew up on a farm outside the Dalles, Oregon, and at 7, 8 years old, I was roaming the hills with my BB gun and my dog, doing whatever I wanted to do, or I was getting on my bike and riding down the road 2 miles to my nearest neighbor that was my age, or whatever. The question is, would I feel comfortable allowing my kid to do that today? And how much of that discomfort is because we see so much on the news as
Right.
compared to what's really changed or it hasn't changed. I'm sure many of these things were out there when we were kids too, or I was a kid, but
Yeah.
they didn't hit the news and you looked at them every morning, you know, when you got out of bed. So I don't know. Parenting these days is not easy, and I give them all the credit in the world for doing the best they can. On the other hand, I think there's some parents out there that could pick up the game too, So
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I mean, as long as there's, you know, people trying for the better for the future generation, I think that's important enough. And just, yeah, kind of at least hoping that,
yeah,
that I mean, if you're a parent, there's a pretty good chance you can help at least with something. You,
yeah.
you might not think it, but
Well, this
you know,
small school district that I finished up with here in Shelton, I think it was a pretty good example of maybe the best in a way, because it was probably as close to a private school as you could get to be a public school. I mean, you had 280 kids. You had extremely engaged parents. We were always being asked to take out a district students. Every year we were full because, and it was because of the, as much as the fact that I had a good staff, it was because of the involvement of the parents. Here's a tiny little school who once a year had an auction, and they had parents ran the auction. They would raise $30,000, 270
Well,
kids in this school, and they would raise $30,000 in an auction, and it was because they were involved and people really cared about that school, and that's the type of parent involvement that you need in a school to make it really go and to be successful. So
I mean, do you
I would
think it's kind
encourage
of,
parents that are listening to find a way to get involved. I think it is extremely important to your kids' success, and it teaches the student a lesson at the same time. Look, mom and dad are involved; they care, uh,
yeah.
and and that's an important lesson for the child as well. So
And so then, Harvey, how are people going to find you? How are they going to be able to work with you, find you on the internet and everything
uh,
else?
uh, they can contact me directly if they want. It's really simple. Harvey Hazen at yahoo.com. That's about as simple as it gets. Uh, so they can write to me uh, directly if they want. I do have a website. It's called harveyhazen.coach, and it has on it connections. A request for a 30-minute appointment to talk. Um, and and what I've been telling people when I'm on a podcast is that uh, the 30-minute conversation for me to get to know people and to find out if it's an appropriate fit for me to help them is absolutely free. That's always. Um, and if they say, well, um, I, I saw you on the podcast and I was interested, then I will give them an additional 30 minutes of just free consultation time with any issue that they want to bring up and talk about. So they can get a hold of me either directly with an email or they can get a hold of me through and at that point, what I'd like, if they can choose whether they just want a telephone call or a Zoom call, whichever, or some other form. And then we can set up a meeting at time and get that done. Uh, I'm hoping that each parent, as they contact me, will get some value out of doing that. That I'll be able to help in some small way, at least. And then if they decide to go further than that, then we can talk about program and how intense that program needs to be and what I would charge and that sort of thing beyond that. But um, I'm trying to handle the website. Um, Looks a little kind of lockstep, like this is the program. It was put together by a Coach Foundation, which I bought a coaching program through that got me started. Um, I'm not as lockstep as the website would kind of indicate. I think every single case is different. And that's so we need to build a program that makes sense for that child, for that parent. And I'm mainly focused on uh, junior high through even college. Um,
Oh, okay.
but
So,
yeah, in fact, I started out the the program that I took, the coach program that I started with said, well, they look at high dollar amounts. They said private college. I said, well, that may be true, but I don't want to be that elite. I want to try to open it up to people that start.
Yeah.
Younger kids, that's okay. If I can help, that's fine. I wouldn't say that's where my specialty is. Yes, I've done work with younger kids. The last district, the little district, it was K7. So yeah, I've had a lot of contact with young kids, and I think I can help there too. Uh, I'm not representing myself as a behavioral counselor.
Okay.
I'm really not. If there's extreme behavior problems, uh, they're probably better sources. If it's more an academic success program or a child that maybe is neurodivergent needs help, instantly I had a child that had ADD myself and raised and advocated for it. He graduated from Lewis and Clark College, so I guess I did something right. But
Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, so I'm perfectly open to working with kids with some neurodivergent uh, problems, but
Sure.
and helping parents know how to advocate for those kids, because I did have to advocate for him, which was interesting since I was the high school principal.
Yeah. Got to
I was advocating for my own kid with an elementary school principal. So, uh,
set an example.
yeah, exactly. So,
So
anyway,
yeah.
but yeah, that's kind of the program, and we'll set it up. I hope to meet some needs, and if I make some money along the way, that's a bonus, I guess.
I'd say so. And I'd say this is a bonus. Getting to meet with you, talk to you today. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, we'll have to do another
Well,
one
I enjoyed
here.
talking to you too. There's nothing like talking to another Oregonian. I'm totally
Yeah,
surprised. It's happened to me twice now, and from people on the East Coast that said, "Oh yeah, I grew up." I go, "What?"
yeah. Well, I mean, we're there where the Oregon people are all around, and so
Well,
yeah, we'll do something again here. So hope you have
okay.
a great rest of your day, and yeah, we'll
You
stay
too.
in touch. All
Really
right.
enjoyed it.
Me too, Harvey.
So,
All
a
right.
couple of Oregonians will stay in touch.
That's right. All right. All right. That's Harvey Hazen. So you guys, thank you for being here. And I don't know if that's even, I know is it going to run now? Is that going to pop up? Oh, now I can do it. Is it going to let me do my thing? You guys, yeah, call in, leave a message if you want. Now that my VLC is back up and going, but sort of is. It's not going as well as I would have liked it to, but it is going. So, shoot, here we go. So, you guys call in, leave a message. Maybe you don't like leaving messages. Maybe you don't. Oh, come on. But maybe you do like leaving messages. You can give me a call, 503-974-6420 if you want. It's cool by me. Or maybe you don't like leaving messages. And then you're like,
We don't leave no stinking messages!
well, I fucked that one up. So thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Um check out Harvey. That was a fun conversation with him. I enjoyed getting to talk with him, and two podcasts in a row getting to bring up the Rajneeshis. So we're on to something. So maybe next show on Friday will be about Rajneeshi. So maybe my other show, maybe one of these other shows. I got the on Tuesday and Thursday. I have When the Gloves Come Off, and on Wednesday looks like I'm gonna be doing possibly another Thinking Man's Pro Wrestling podcast. All here on the Quantum Global Broadcasting Network, QGBN. I'm your host, Rusty Diamond, and that is the show. Man, boom!
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Ernest! Ernest! Ernest!
Yes, Pee-wee.
You brought the snacks, right?